That's Dolores. You can close the door if you want. It's okay.
It's very clean, very nice.
It's clean because she just cleaned it. It just yeah.
Yes, and
After
it's
Hebrew school.
area, so look at it.
Yes. Okay, how are we doing, my friends? Shlomo says Baruch Hashem. Okay, Shlomo says Baruch Hashem, and Baruch Hashem, and Baruch Hashem. Oh, no. Good evening, Faith. Good evening, Michelle. We're waiting for you guys. I won't say which one are you waiting for. Okay, evening. How are you? Okay, let's start. It's quiet, but it's good. But you're here, we can go. So, evening, Erev Tov, everyone that's watching. So, we are talking about basar b'chalav. Remember what that means? And obviously, you know, because yours are here. But basar is meat, and chalav is dairy. And this is one of the fundamental ideas in kosher that you can't mix meat and milk. We got that. So, last week we talked about the Torah source for that. Not cooking a kid in its mother's milk, and we explained the different requirements, not only of not cooking, but not eating and not getting any benefit, not even taking any pleasure from meat and milk together. Which is why you can't cook for a non-Jew, you can't own a store, etc. The mixture of meat and milk. But what's more likely for a person to have, more than having even meat cooked with milk, which we talked about last week, where you can't cook them. I have. I'll think one. Yes, thank you very much, Michelle. We talked last week you can't cook meat and milk and all that, right? But what's even more likely than a person by mistake putting milk into their chicken soup is being at the same table as someone else and eating milk by mistake, not milk in your meat, but having a dairy product together with a meat meal, vice versa. But that could happen much more frequently. So let's today talk about the safeguards that the rabbis put into place to protect that we shouldn't come to eat meat and milk together, the many different rabbinic enactments we have to prevent us, thank you very much, Michelle, to prevent us from even coming. You want to pass it here?
Will that include like the equipment?
Yeah, equipment is a whole other conversation that we are going to get to, but not today. So today we're not talking about ovens and equipment and kosher. We're simply talking about there's a clear biblical prohibition not to cook meat and milk together, not to eat meat and milk together. But the rabbis have a job of making offensive on the Torah. So they gave us many different things to do to prevent us from accidentally coming to eat meat and milk together at the same meal. Not only the cooking, which we talked about last week, but the eating them together. So let's start on page 68 with a quote from the Shulchan Aruch, from Rabbi Yosef Cairo. He writes as follows. This is the halacha in the code of Jewish law. If one has eaten meat, even from a non-domesticated animal or a bird, they must wait 6 hours before consuming cheese. Even after waiting the required time, if meat is found between the teeth, it must be removed. Someone who chews food for a baby must also wait 6 hours. So here we have clear that if you ate meat, Jewish law, the Shulchan Aruch tells us that you cannot eat milk or dairy. I say milk, dairy for 6 hours. Yes.
Okay, so going like what you just touched on. So if, let's say it's 6 hours have gone by, and all of a sudden you're like, what is that? And you find a piece of meat within your tooth.
Oh, very good question. What happens if you find the pita?
Another 6 hours?
So it says right over here, if even that, no. It says right here, if after that you find meat. Okay, so let me answer more properly. Faith's question was, what if you find meat in, when does the 6 hours start? Let's go this way first. When does the 6 hours start? It starts from when you finish eating, not from when you finish the meal. So let's say Shabbos is a perfect example. Shabbos, you come after davening, you have a nice bowl of delicious cholent, and if there's a good sponsor, you know, some pastrami, some good hot pastrami with the fat and everything and all the flavor, and you finish eating your pastrami at 12:30. Okay, davening finish 12:50, 12:38. But now you sit and schmooze with everyone for another hour. We farang, we have a l'chaim, and you sit in shul till 2 o'clock, and then you go home at 2 o'clock. So does the 6 hours start from when you finished eating the meat at 12:30, or does it start from when you got up from the table and you finished the meal at 2 o'clock? 12:30. 12:30. So now Faith's question is, what happens if at 2:00 when you went home, you clean your teeth or you look like they, and see there's still meat, there's still shalom somehow got stuck, pastrami piece got stuck between your teeth. So now you took the pastrami out from your teeth at 2:00. Does no? So that when you take that out of your mouth, that doesn't start at 6 hours. 6 hours from when you finish eating, because there's two different opinions. Why do we wait 6 hours? Where did the number 6 hours come from? If you look by the next page, so the Gemara actually brings a statement from. I'll just tell you outside. Mar Ukva in the Talmud said that his father wouldn't eat meat or dairy after he ate until the next day, but I just wait till the next meal. How long is the next meal? A whole discussion. The consensus of the rabbis is 6 hours. Why 6 hours? So one opinion is that's how long it takes for the meat to digest, the fats of the meat to digest in your stomach, is 6 hours. One opinion is because that's how long it takes for the food in your mouth. They didn't brush their teeth back then. It wasn't like today, we brush, we floss. It was a little different. Hygiene was different then. So then people ate food, and it kind of took a few hours for the food to kind of get in here. I see Michelle's getting grossed out. See, that's why you ate before you came. The food took time to naturally, so to say, get out of their. They didn't have dentists back then. I don't know when dentistry even was invented, but it's definitely not a long time ago. So the question is, the reason why we wait 6 hours, is it to give time for this meat to be digested, or is it to give time for the food in your mouth to, so to say, be washed away, that there shouldn't be any more meat stuck between your teeth? Okay? So that's why it's clear that the Shulchan Aruch, when the Shulchan Aruch writes about the meat stuck between your teeth, it's clear where the Shulchan Aruch, which opinion, what he's concerned for. But you don't restart your 6 hours when you take the meat out of your mouth. That's when it's from. Okay. And that today is the idea of 6 hours. I should point out 6 hours is not like a biblical commandment. Sometimes, whatever, if someone's sick. But generally speaking, that's the consensus for sure in the Ashkenazi world. We wait 6 hours. Okay. And that's even the start. That's what the Shulchan Aruch waits 6 hours. Now, after eating cheese, section 2. Let's go the opposite way. Not from meat, and now you want to eat dairy. Let's go, you ate dairy, you had pizza, whatever, excuse me, and now you want to eat meat. Well, let's see. After eating cheese, one is permitted to eat meat immediately, provided, what's the conditions? They inspect their hands to ensure no cheese residue remains. If it's nighttime and you can't see, again, this is before electricity, before you had back like Friday night with Shabbat candles, because people would eat in the dark at night. So, it was special to have light at your dinner table. So if this inspection cannot be done at night, you must wash your hands to make sure there's no residue. Additionally, your mouth must be cleaned and rinsed. This cleaning involves thoroughly chewing bread or another suitable food, except for flour, dates, and vegetables, as these can become lodged in the palate and are inadequate for cleansing. Right? If you eat a date, the date doesn't clean away what's there; it just gets more stuck. It's like more, and many vegetables will be like that too. After, or anything doughy for that matter. After this, the mouth should be rinsed with water or wine. When does the above apply? With regard to the meat of domesticated and non-domesticated animals. However, if one wishes to eat poultry after cheese, remember, why are you not allowed to eat poultry? It's only rabbinic to begin with. So therefore, since it's only rabbinic to begin with, neither mouth cleaning nor hand washing is required. You could have the dairy, so you can have the chicken right after the dairy. This is what the Rabbi Yankie Denburg wrote in the Shulchan Aruch. Now, let me clarify that this is obviously not the Chabad custom. Chabad waits an hour for everything. We're going to get to hard cheese in the next paragraph. But we wait, even after a dairy, we wait a full hour. But this is not a requirement of Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah, we'll get to this. So our custom is to wait an hour even after meeting dairy. Okay, so we wait an hour, but in Jewish law, there is no requirement. And there are people that actually don't wait in between dairy and meat. They just do three things. Make sure their hands are clean. They wash out their mouth, and they eat something. So both liquid and a solid. So just the drink is not enough, just the solid is not enough. And you have both.
So the issue is your mouth.
Or for dairy, because dairy gets digested very quickly. You drink a glass of milk. Let's read the third paragraph. After hard cheese, which does take longer to digest, waiting after hard cheese. Hard cheese is a list right over here. Hard cheese would include, I thought there was a list here. Right here on page 77. Cheddar, Parmesan, Parmenterieri Jack, Romano, marble cheese, provolone, picante, Emmental Reserve, which is another fancy name for real Swiss cheese, not American Swiss cheese, which is not aged for 6 months. And some say feta cheese. Okay.
I also learned that if melted cheese.
I'm going to talk about the melted cheese in a minute. Yeah, melted cheese is not necessarily hard anymore. I'm going to address it. I have it in my notes. So let's read paragraph 3. Some authorities are stringent regarding a 6-hour wait between eating hard cheese and meat. Thus, the custom is that after eating hard cheese, one does not eat even poultry, like chicken, which is only rain to begin with, similar to the law regarding cheese after meat. Some are lenient to not wait between hard cheese and meat, and one need not object to their conduct, though they must clean and rinse their mouths and wash their hands. Nonetheless, adopting the stricter practice and waiting 6 hours is preferable. This is the Ramah. This is indeed what we do. So after a hard cheese, we wait 6 hours. However, I'll just already jump a little bit ahead because someone asked me. Many rabbis are lenient when that hard cheese becomes cooked or melted. So, for example, if you have feta cheese or you have mozzarella cheese, which is considered not mozzarella cheese, Munster cheese, Parmesan cheese, but you cook the cheese, so now it became like a liquidy, more saucy, even though it's a Parmesan cheese, which is an aged cheese. Because it's now become more liquidy, it makes it easier to digest, and we only wait 1 hour. So that's why there are many people, some would be proper and strict in the wait to 6 hours. But many people, if let's say they're having eggplant Parmesan, they're having, let's say, lasagna, right? So you have Parmesan cheese in the lasagna, but the cheese is no longer a hard cheese. It's been melted and cooked. Now it's part of a liquid. And therefore, they will say that since it's already been like broken down, and therefore we only wait 1 hour, not 6 hours. And there's definitely room to be lenient because the whole idea of waiting after dairy to meat, the whole thing is like almost like a custom after a rabbinic enactment. The rabbis only said to wait 6 hours from meat to dairy. The rabbis in the Talmud didn't say to wait 6 hours, to wait anything from dairy, to meat. Now, Shulchan Aruch brings that some also wait the other way. And so that's what we do, and that's what Jewish law says. But when there's an additional leniency where the cheese has already been cooked down, etc., notice the Orbi policy, and many rabbis rely on this. And in that case, you also only need to wait 1 hour. But that depends which. Yes, it's a gray area from how strict it's going to be. But yes, I do know Chabad rabbis that will wait only 1 hour. I'm personally not strict. I'll wait only 1 hour. And yes, we looked into this recently. There's a question about this in the school. And my brother actually asked one of the big Chabad rabbis, and he said there's a lot of leniency to be lenient. So he didn't want to say, no, you don't. But he was like, there's definitely what to be lenient on. And that is the ORB standard. That's only 1 hour, and I'm comfortable with that. Personally, I should know my leniencies on whatever, but that's, I think there's a lot to be, because the whole thing to begin with is, and I know I'm comfortable saying this because my brother just researched this like 4 weeks ago, and he looked at one of the big guys in Chabad who told him, definitely, want to be lenient, there's definitely what to be, yeah.
He taught me this because we had every multi Shabbos we would get pizza.
Okay. Yeah.
So we would eat cholent. Some people eat cholent, and then they would wait 6 hours.
After the cholent, they would wait 6 hours.
6 hours to eat pizza at night, or like 7
Yeah.
hours. But then some guys would be like, "Oh, what if I eat pizza now, but I have chicken in the house in the dorm from lunch from this week? What should we do?" And the shulchan told us you should wait 1 hour.
Yeah.
Melted cheese.
Right. So with pizza, melted cheese, and I think that's the accepted standard norm. That unless it's an actual hard cheese, you're eating real hard, real Swiss cheese, not American cheese, etc., then you wait 6 hours. Okay. I lost my place over here. Okay. So now,
So cream cheese is 1 hour.
say again.
Cream cheese is
Cream cheese for sure 1 hour. That's just a congealed cheese, milk. That's not even like a real cheese. That's soft, whatever. Okay. Now, let's talk about something that's cooked together with meat. So let's say, for example, you don't eat the cholent, but you don't eat any meat in your cholent. You got a bowl of cholent. Okay, let's say Shabbos, you're here in Shul, you got a bowl of cholent, but in your bowl, there was no meat in your bowl. Right? It's still particles, it's all cooked together. I'm just clarifying. So even though all you ate is the potatoes, right? You don't even like the meat, for example. Let's say you do what Randy did last week. She made cholent for Vivi. She took the meat out, right? Right? It's still fleishiks. And you have to wait the same 6 hours after eating that pretend vegetarian cholent as if you're eating the meat. Does it make any difference? So, but if you sat at the table, okay, sitting at the table does not make you fleishiks. We're going to talk in a few minutes about eating at the table if you're eating dairy and they're eating fleishiks. But you can be sitting with a whole bunch of people and they're all gorging down their, hot pastrami, and you can go out and come to this room, make yourself a coffee with milk, and that's no problem.
Question. So she sits on the table and she doesn't eat the meat, she eats just salad, but she's using silverware to eat.
The dishes, okay, clean. Let's say real silverware, not plastic.
Right. Yes, that it's meat.
Yes.
Because you have dairy and meat. But you use meat.
Excellent question. So let me just elaborate your question because it's exactly the next point here. So what if you cook food and forget about using the fork and knife? Let's say you cooked, not cholent. Let's say we cooked pasta. Or let's say we made a vegetarian cholent this week with no meat. We had no meat. We made a vegetarian cholent in the cholent pot. Now the cholent pot is clean. Henry cleaned it. Well, it's a fleishik pot, but it hasn't been used in 24 hours. So remember, if a pot was used in 24 hours, the flavor of the meat biblically is there. After it has been used since last Shabbos, and it's clean. There was no, when I put the rice and whatever, we made a vegetarian cholent because maybe someone sponsored the Kiddush weekend, they're vegetarian, right? So it's a vegetarian cholent, but cooked in a regular fleishik cholent pot. Do you need to wait 6 hours after eating that cholent because it was cooked in the fleishik pot?
I say yes.
You say yes. Okay.
And the reason is because the heat.
It's just the equipment. And there's a concept called Neisin Tam, Bar Neisin Tam, which means the flavor of the meat went into the pot. And then the flavor of the pot went into the potatoes or the rice. So that rice does not make you flavor. That itself cannot be eaten with milk. Meaning you cannot eat something cooked in fleishiks together with milk. Well, let me take that back. Actually, take that back. You could actually. We don't, whatever. Here you're getting to a very gray area. But for sure, you are allowed, you're not fleishiks. So if you had, not fleishiks. So if that week the cholent was parv, even though we made it in the same cholent pot that last week had fleishiks, 100% your parv, and afterwards you can have ice cream. Yeah.
Not our ice cream.
But you can't what?
Dairy ice cream.
Dairy ice cream. But you can't eat it together with milk. So you can't have coffee. You can't have coffee with milk while you're eating the parv cholent because it's cooked in a fleishik pot.
So is that just like let's say a biblical thing? Because it's like, not for nothing. Okay, if I'm eating this bowl of cholent that is parv, and I literally finish that and now I can take a sip of my milk, that doesn't.
Yeah, I'll explain to the difference. I'm explaining to the difference. There's a big difference. Okay, I'll explain the difference. Is meat kosher? Yes. Is milk kosher? Yes. The only problem is the mixing the two together.
Right.
So if you eat meat, or not meat, let's say you ate something that was cooked in a meat pot, which absorbed flavor of the meat. So it's nice and tam, which I'm not going to get to the whole, scholarly part of this. So at that moment when you're eating it, that has a meat flavor. If you would drink milk simultaneously while you were eating rice that was cooked in a meat pot, you would have in your mouth a meat flavor and a milk flavor. But after you swallow that rice, that parv cholent, there's no meat inside you now. Now, 30 seconds later, you can take a sip of milk. Or, never had coffee and cholent together. I don't know if it goes together, but doesn't really sound right. But ice cream, I'm saying after the cholent, if it's parv, the fact that it was made in a fleishik thing means you can't eat dairy simultaneously. So we won't eat milk while we're eating a parv item cooked in a fleshik pot. But just because it was cooked in a fleshik pot, if the actual food itself is parv, you remain parv, and afterwards you can have dairy.
Okay, what about if I have the plate that it's meat? It's a meat plate, but I eat vegetarian, I think that.
Yeah, it's a meat plate, but you're eating parv, yeah.
Yeah, and I can have a dairy cup.
No, not simultaneously. In general, first of all, you can't have a meat plate. You can't have a meat plate and a dairy cup together either. Because what happens if the plate is hot? Now, let's say you spill the milk on the plate with the hot food. Now it's going to be treif. So, but that's not our conversation. We're not even talking about this. So I don't want to get to dishes now. The dishes, equipment. Yeah, I understand. That's why I already said in the introduction. This conversation is more practical than last week. Because the likelihood of you putting milk into your cholent is not likely. I mean, mistakes happen, but it's not likely. But the likelihood of eating a dairy product at the same meal when you had cholent, or that is much more likely. And that's why we wait 6 hours. It's a rabbinic enactment to protect you. And even though the other way, we also wait an hour, as our custom, wait an hour. But otherwise, just the pot, we don't eat dairy with something cooked in a fleshik pot, but it doesn't make us fleshik that we have to wait that long. No. Now, here's another. I think we missed some key words here. Kinuach and adacha. Do we not? Okay, I guess we didn't do it yet. Okay. I thought we did it. Okay, maybe we'll get to it. Okay. Yeah, page 73. So now we come to a new twist. You ready? A new angle. Turn to page 70. I just did everything till page 70. Sorry, page 73. Sorry, till page 73. I'm going to introduce you to something called a davar charif. A davar charif is something sharp, like an onion or garlic or radish or lemon or grain or even herring or anything that's cold. So there's no heat, but there's a sharpness that's going to transmit the flavor just by its sharpness. So when you take this, let's say a lemon, you cut a lemon, you cut an onion, you cut a garlic, because there's an acid or like a strong bitterness in this lemon or in this garlic or in this onion, then that fleshik knife, when you cut with a fleshik knife, now the onion becomes fleshiks. Understand? Pickle too, anything spicy. So let me explain to you. So if you cut an apple with a fleshik knife, okay? After you eat the apple, can you then have milk? Yeah, because the fleshik knife didn't make the apple fleshiks. But if you cut an onion with a fleshik knife, and now you put this onion into your omelet, for example, now it's a fleshik omelet. You understand? You could not put cheese and onions together into your omelet if you cut the onions, which are parv, but they're spicy, with a fleshik knife. Big twist. And a lot of people don't realize this because it's cold and you're just cutting tomatoes and onions. But this can be a real problem. One of the issues you have, let's say if you have no hot, you're serving bagels and cream cheese breakfast, right? It's all cold. But someone cuts the onions for the cream cheese sandwich with a fleshik knife. That's not allowed. Yeah. They can cut the tomatoes because tomatoes are not acidy. They're not spicy. There's no charif. But the onions, that's a problem. So you can cut a bagel, just to I'll clear. You can cut the bagel for a cream cheese sandwich with the challah knife or the meat knife they use on Shabbos. Because the bagel has no spice to it whatsoever. So no fleshik flavor from okay, assuming it's a clean knife. If the knife is dirty, if the knife has any residue on it, obviously then the fat on the knife is getting absorbed into the bread. Obviously, that's now a fleshik bagel. But I'm talking about the perfectly clean knife, from your kitchen. You open up your kitchen drawer, it's a perfectly clean knife, spotless, and you cut your bagel is still parv. But if you cut your onion is not parv. And that does anything spicy. It could be a lemon, it could be horseradish. What it says over here, radishes, horseradish, garlic. I remember hearing herring is considered a davar charif. No, herring is just very spicy. It's pungent, whatever. It pulls a pickle, probably. Okay. It's not spicy. It has like an acid that brings out. It's going to bring out the flavor. Okay. Okay. Okay, now let's go to, so look at page 74. Page 74 gives you a very nice little chart over here to show us the differences. So if you ate meat and now you want to eat dairy, do you have to wait 6 hours? Of course, right? Now, what happens if you ate meat and now you want to eat an onion cooked in a dairy pot? Okay, an onion cooked with cut with a dairy knife. You ate meat. So now you have to wait 6 hours to eat dairy. What happens if you want to eat now an onion, parv, but was cooked in a dairy pot? Okay, let me go back. Could you eat rice cooked in the dairy pot after you ate meat?
No, rice cooked in a dairy pot.
You have rice cooked in a dairy pot. You ate meat. You ate meat. Okay? Now an hour left for dessert. They want to give you, let's think of a good dessert. I don't know, apple strudel. I don't know, whatever. Okay, cooked in a dairy pot, which normally we wouldn't serve with cooked in a dairy pot. Well, let's say you ate fleischiks. Okay, your meat. Now you're eating a totally parv thing that was cooked in a dairy pot. Now you're serving it on the plate. It's not like you're not putting dairy on your table. Is that apple strudel allowed to be eaten for dessert if you had fleischiks a half hour before?
No, I don't think so. It's not hot.
It's not hot. We didn't. When you cooked it, so now it's nice and tam, which means that the dairy flavor that was the milk you cooked in that pot 2 weeks ago, and then you cleaned the pot. Now you cooked it.
It was 2 days ago.
It has to be a clean pot. We're talking about a clean pot, not within 24 hours. Yeah, now within 24 hours. That's very important. Yeah. You just use it. It's not used within 24 hours, but it's a dairy pot. Or you cut with a dairy knife. Let me make it easier. You had a fleishik. I'll make it simple, okay? I'll make it simple. You got a fleishik cholent. Now you won't have dessert. Fruit. Healthy dessert, okay? You had a big cholent. You won't have fruit. Someone cut the fruit with a dairy knife. It's a great question. Can you eat the fruit cut with a dairy knife?
Yes, it's not spicy.
Well, what if it's a pineapple? Very acidic. So if it's a watermelon, you can eat the watermelon cut with a dairy knife.
Depends.
But if it's a pineapple, yeah, pineapples are very like a lemon, very much. Depends. Very good. But normally, if someone cut up, generally speaking, a fruit salad, minus the pineapple, I think would be considered a charif, but just watermelon and cantaloupe and honeydew, those would be fine. And you could eat the cantaloupe that was cut with a dairy knife after you had the chocolate.
But
How?
from what I remember with Hannah all the time, whenever we make food, okay, if it's fleshy, then we use just everything. And I ask,
Of course.
is there, is this,
Of course. So I'm telling you what the legal requirement is here. Now, if you want to run a healthy, efficient kitchen, you have separate sets of dishes because so you're going to remember this knife I can use to cut the watermelon, but I have to use that knife to cut the pineapple. You know what I'm saying? So you're going to start going crazy. So if we're going to serve at a fleishik meal, just only use a fleishik knife. That's the easiest way. But just because that's what my wife does, and that's the way you should do it, and the way you should set up your kitchens is that you have completely separate, where you don't mix knives. And if you're eating a dairy meal, you prepare the vegetables and the salad with a dairy knife. If you're eating a meat meal, you prepare with a meat knife. That's what you should do. But we're living halacha now. So if someone calls it, I started preparing a salad for my meat dinner. I just realized I was cutting the salad with my dairy knife. It happens. It happens all the time. This is a very, very practical case. So I just cut salad with a dairy knife, and I want to eat it together with my fleishik, my whatever I'm having for dinner, my chicken I'm having for dinner.
What you cut in the salad?
Exactly. So then you need to know that there's a difference. What was cut and what could be used and what can't. So you cut the tomatoes, that's fine. You can serve tomatoes cut with a dairy knife in the salad that you're eating with fleischiks. But the onions that you cut, or that you can't. Understand? So it's a big difference. Now, obviously, you can start going to remembering of that. So better just only use a meat knife. But
makes sense. There's not much to it makes sense.
to have separate knives. Of course it makes sense. And that's what most frum people do. They have separate knives.
Right, but now when you taught us about the dairy food, even you use flashy, but you cut with the dairy knife, cucumber, tomato is good, onion, no, of course. So it makes sense, all this.
Of course, it makes sense. Okay, Sarah agrees. We got approval. No, but it does make sense. Correct. So now, do you have so now that you understand this, so now let's go a step further. Let's say I ate flakes, okay, and now let's say now an hour later, I have a salad that was cut with a dairy knife, including an onion in it. I just told you we shouldn't eat it. But if you do eat it, you haven't violated a sin. Bidi Yevet, it's okay. I would be strict not to eat it. I wouldn't eat such a salad. But if someone ate it, didn't realize, or got mixed in already, let's say the onion got mixed into everything. So now you have to throw out the whole salad. Well, let's say they're serving, whatever. Then 100% it's okay. Bidi Yevet, meaning after the fact, there's definitely room to be lenient and say, okay, since it's already another level, and the whole waiting, the 6 hours now, is only rabbinic to begin with. It's not like now we're serving it at the same time. So then you can serve the salad afterwards for dessert. Like let's say someone cut up dessert, someone cut up pineapple with a dairy knife as being served. There's room to be lenient. You have to understand, there's room to say it's not a problem. Even though, again, ideally, it should be a totally separate knife. Don't mix the two. It should only be meat knives if you're serving a meat dessert, etc.
But if you eat first the salad and then after the flakes, it's okay.
Say again?
If you eat the salad, that you cut the onion with the dairy knife, and then you eat flakes after, it's okay.
Right, so that's in the second line. If you have a parv item cooked together with the meat. So if the parv item was cooked with meat, like a potato from the cholent, so then you have to wait 6 hours before you eat dairy. But do you need to wait 6 hours to eat an onion that was cut with a dairy knife or onion cooked in a dairy pot? Again, better to wait, but you don't have to. Better to wait. But it's not min hadin, by law, it's not required. There's many things we do in kosher today that become safeguards, even above the rabbinic safeguards. That's how our mothers taught us, because they wanted to make sure no one make a mistake in their kitchen. So a good Jewish mother is even more strict than Jewish law is, and you see many examples. So we were raised, you can't eat it. But min hadin, it's okay. And again, Mark's not here to get nervous, and maybe my job is to teach you the halacha, not to teach you how to be fanatics. Exactly. Okay.
You were like, Mom, can I eat this? Oh, Mom, can I eat this?
I avoided the kitchen. No, but people make mistakes. Kids make mistakes in kitchens. I know can make a mistake. So whatever. Now, however, if the parv item is cooked in a clean fleshik pot, let me ask you: if you have a parv item, okay, you cooked rice in a fleshik pot. Now, can you eat milk 10 minutes later? Yes. Yes. Because if there was no actual meat in what you ate, just because it was cooked in a dairy fleshik pot, just means you can't eat the milk and this fleshik together. But 10 minutes later, you absolutely could.
But in order to use this pot to cook the rice, you need to
Has to be clean and not used for 24 hours. Again, if the pot was dirty, then it's not like you're cooking in a pot, then you're cooking it with meat. And they do that, by the way, one of the issues with caterers or a restaurant is that a caterer, they don't wash the pot between every time they use it. Of course not. They're using these massive, massive pots. They made whatever they made. Maybe they rinsed it out. Maybe. But very often not, because you're not going to taste the difference if there was, I don't think yesterday's cholent, but they're doing multiple dishes. And to wash out a big pot is work. It's not like, what I'm saying. So maybe they scrape it out. Next. Cutting boards. You think knives. You think they wash knives in between things? Of course not. That's why I don't get distracted about fish, but or cutting fruit. So some people, I won't eat cut fruit, period. But many people will eat cut fruit if you're buying a prepared thing where it's coming from a facility where they're only cutting fruit, so there's only need for cutting fruit. But if you go to Publix or something, where they could be using the same knife to cut shrimp, cheese, and then 10 minutes later, they're going to cut the fish, or cut watermelon. Right. So if it's different departments, that's exactly the thing. So if it's a different department where it's a different kitchen, like there's a meat kitchen that's separate, and then some people will rely on that. Well, I wouldn't eat it. But there's definitely religious Jews that do. and they rely on this. And I haven't researched exactly how separated Publix's kitchens are, but definitely some people are like, so if you're going to a small little mom and pop restaurant though, whatever, we're there for sure not. See, in Publix, there's different departments.
Yeah, but they don't
And-
have kosher knives when they're cutting.
No, but if the knife is only used for cutting fruit, I'm getting myself distracted. If in Publix there's a section just to cut fruit, and they cut enough fruit every single day, and I don't know how much they do adults. I'm not giving a ruling, but if they're cutting enough volume, then we can assume that this knife and this cutting board is only used to cut fruit. And the person in charge of cutting fruit is not the same person, it's not just the department, who's in charge of cutting fish. Because if it's the same person that does both, the likelihood of them walking with their knife from here to there doing the same is very high. So why I wouldn't eat in Publix. I wouldn't buy Publix, but some people would. Never again. I'm not getting. But let's say you go to a treif restaurant, because a non-kosher restaurant, I'm going to get cut fruit. But the likelihood of that cut fruit being cut with the same knife and the same cutting board, where they could have cut onions or sausage, something hot, or even something cold, but a cold salad which had onions or whatever, garlic, it's very likely. So that's the idea of davar chara. Okay. So, I actually have a disagreement with the next paragraph on page 74. Not disagreement. It's. I looked at the source. It's bringing from a Shabbos Jewish, but I was raised in my home differently, and in my home we don't do it the way it says it over here. A child. So a child under 3 may drink milk after eating meat without waiting 6 hours. That is the way it is in my house as well. Under 3, we don't make them wait. Under 3. They don't understand. A child does not reach the age of chinuch, the age of education, until they're 3 years old. So generally speaking, you're not obligated to make your children keep mitzvahs till the age of 3 at all. Wearing a yarmulke, keeping Shabbos, like there's no obligation. They haven't formally begun chinuch, formally. So until 3, a child could have eaten supper, right? They had chicken for supper, and 15 minutes later put it into bed, and you give them a milk bottle. Happens all the time. All the time. In my house, where I grew up, and this is kind of what we do, then we go by the age. So 3 is where I was growing up. If you're 3 years old, you got to wait 3 hours. So 4, you got to wait 4 hours and 5 hours. Here it says until the age of 10. I never. So Shlomo's Rosh Hashiva did the same thing they did in my house. That's how I grew up. That's how I grew up. That you waited the number of hours according to your age. So a 4-year-old waited 4 hours to have a bottle of milk after meat. A 5-year-old waited 5 hours. And by 6, you waited.
A kid 4 years old after he ate
Very simple. No. It's not kosher. You had fleishiks, you can have milchiks. And if you say it with such absolute simplicity, they accept it. My tzvi loves bottles. He'll take almond milk. That's part of what, like, there's a bottle every night. He has almond milk. That's the solution. So in my house, the idea that Matzvi is 4 years old to have whatever. I was raised differently, and my wife also, and I see Shlomo's Rosh Hashiva has the same custom. That's where I grew up.
His sons that were like in yeshiva, he was like, yeah, that's how we did it growing up.
Yeah, we got 4. So exactly. So his family, so his Rosh Hashiva did the exact same thing, exactly the way that we did it when I was growing up. Okay, fine. Now just the time between dairy and meat. So we talked about meat to dairy. Now section 2 is about the time between dairy and meat. We said that there's 3 things. It's kind of repeating what you already read. So what are the 3 things that you need to do in between meat to dairy? Again, Chabad customers wait an hour. But even if not an hour, even if you're waiting an hour, what else do you need to do? Number 1 is kinuach. Look on page 76. Kinuach is to clean out your mouth by eating a solid food. Not a sticky solid food, but a solid food. And like bread or a cracker. Number 2 is hadacha. You have to rinse out your mouth. You have to drink a liquid. And then number 3 was to wash your hands. Okay. I'm going to skip the thing about medications. It's not so relevant. Again, we talk about cheese that's aged for more than 6 months. We kind of jumped ahead that you should wait 6 hours. But if it's melted down, then you can kind of rely on it. Now, let's go. We have time. I want to do chapter 5 because it's very much connected about separating at the table. And then afterwards, you can do the test in chapter 4 and chapter 5. So, in addition to waiting 6 hours, we also don't eat meat and milk together on the same table. Shlomo's sitting here. Okay, Sarah, you are not on the same table, so it's not a problem. But let's say you were sitting and Sarah was sitting over here. You're both sitting at the same table. The Shlomo shouldn't eat meat, and Sarah had to eat milk at the same time. Why? It says, here's a Shulchan Aruch, page 86. It is prohibited to place even the meat of a non-domesticated animal or poultry on a table where cheese is eaten, lest one mistakenly eat them together. You can't put them on the same table. That's the requirement of the rabbis in Jewish law. However, putting them side by side on the serving table is permitted. Serving table doesn't mean where people are taking food. It means like on your kitchen counter. You're allowed to have them in the kitchen in the same place. Even though, again, we have separate counters, but that's because of the heat and all things getting mixed up, mixing up dishes. But theoretically, if let's say a person had an island and he put a bottle of milk down on the island, it's not because you can't put meat on the same island now. You can put, can't hop. Tell me where we're eating. Where you're eating, you might come, you see them on the same table, you're eating your meat, and someone puts a bottle of milk on the table without thinking, you may pour yourself a glass of milk and drink some milk. Okay? That's the requirement of Shulchan Aruch.
We learned that you shouldn't even put them next to each other, even if it's serving. It's like another fence. You shouldn't do that.
I agree. I would put when it says serving table, to me, it doesn't mean like the buffet table.
No.
You never do that. Have a buffet table and take a choice. Either you're taking meat, you're taking dairy. Doesn't make sense. Serving table to me, and the way I'm understanding it, is when you're preparing in the place where you prepare the food. B'shulchan sheseder alav tavshel means a table where you're organizing it, like where you're cooking it. I agree. So then you have a problem. That's why you have to be careful. That's what you're allowed to. Meaning,
Or I was just gonna sort of funny thing, if you eat something spicy, let's say something spicy meat, and somebody by accident takes like a dairy drink on the counter, you don't know, and you want to wash it down because it's spicy, then that's a modern way of understanding how it makes sense.
okay.
This is like for restaurants, not people's homes.
Yeah. I agree. I actually, if I was ready, I would not have put that last line even in here because I wouldn't do that. Have them on the same serving table. One who ate cheese and now wants to eat meat should remove any leftover dairy from the table before. So let's say you had a dairy lunch. Okay, just you, and that was the time you didn't clean up from lunch yet. You were lazy. Now I'm gonna eat dinner. You must clean the table from any leftover crumbs or any leftover food from the cheese before you can put meat onto that table. Same thing. Okay, I'm going to get to number 3 about the cook in a minute. Let's go look at page 88, which tells us there's a rabbinic prohibition against eating at the same table. I shouldn't have even read that. As one eating the opposite type of food. Yeah, let me just explain this outside. Meaning, by the way, it's not with non-kosher food. Meaning, if Shlomo's eating kosher and Joe is sitting over there eating non-kosher, you're allowed to sit on the same table as him eating non-kosher. Why? What's the likelihood of you taking his non-kosher food? Non-existent. But Sarah's eating kosher dairy. You know her food is kosher, right? So you're much more comfortable since the milk is kosher. Your guard is not up. And that's why this whole prohibition is only with kosher meat and kosher milk. But there's no prohibition from eating on the same table as a non-kosher person. Right. Because the likelihood of you eating a non-kosher food is very, very low. But if you were eating with a bunch of Jews, you're all friendly by the kiddush, for example, if you're sitting on top of the kiddush, right, and you're eating dairy salad and everyone's eating challah, and someone's saying, let me taste that salad. And grab and take. It's happened. So take everything. There you go. Very good. Okay. However, there's some conditions, some restrictions. What are the conditions? Where you'll be allowed? Where you're sitting far enough from each other that they cannot reach each other's plates. So let's say the table is a 10-foot long table, and you're sitting on one of the table, you're sitting on the other end of the table. If it's too far to reach, we're not worried you may actually you have to get up and walk over to the other guy's table. And then already you'll remember that you're not supposed to. How long is your kitchen table?
Well, it seats 4 people on each side.
Could you reach over and say reach something?
Not unless I do magical arms.
So if it's far enough that you can't reach each other's plates, then it's okay. Another example would be if you're sitting with someone that you wouldn't eat from their food, so someone that's a stranger. So let's say you're in a restaurant, or let's say a better example, you go to cafeteria or whatever, yeah. In a cafeteria, but it's not your friends that you're sitting together by a kiddush. It's a stranger. So you're sitting in a hotel, whatever, right? And then and you go to, let's say you go to, a good example, you go to a like those food whatever, where they have all different restaurants. Let's say Tel Kosher. Let's say you're in Israel. Okay, you're in the mall. okay, and you ordered some shawarma, and the person next to you is eating ice cream from a different store, okay, whatever. And you're sitting right next to the person. In Israel, everything's very close. But the likelihood of you taking some shawarma off his plate, it's not very likely because you're strangers. His food is not your food. So then it's okay. Or if you're eating on something that will remind you of the separations. If you're eating on placemats, and this is what you should do anyway if you're at home, you eat with Luke, even if far as you can't reach, you have placemats. If you have a placemat, that's a clear reminder you're eating on the blue placemat. That means you're eating dairy. And you're eating on the red placemat. That's when you're eating meat. And the placemat is a reminder to keep you from eating from each other's food. Or, okay, so that's good. Or you make a hecker. A hecker means a reminder on the table. A reminder has to be something that was not going to be on the table anyway. You put there just to remind you not to eat their food. Also knows a separation of husband and wife. But so, for example, it gives you an example of, if you look at the examples on page number 89, you have something which belongs there is not a hecker. But if you let's say put a bottle of wine or a napkin holder, which is not normally on the table, which is why these examples are, which is not normally going to be there. You don't make a whole big deal like we'll put up a wall, but you go like you take something which wasn't going to be on the table and you put it on the table, big enough to be visible. It can't be like a piece of paper or something like. You put it there between you. That could serve as a reminder not to reach over and take their food. Okay? It's not a mechitza. It's a hecker. It's a reminder. A mechitza is an actual separation. Putting a bottle of wine, we're not drinking wine. If we're drinking wine, then the bottle, so Friday night, the bottle of wine is not a hecker. But tonight by supper, I don't drink wine on Tuesday night. You know, if I take a bottle of wine, put it on my dinner table tonight, or else I'm eating lunch, right? I'm not, yeah. So, cozy wine on my table on Tuesday, on Wednesday is what they actually get. If you see a bottle of wine on my dinner table, I'm eating dinner, then that's a hecker because it doesn't normally go on my Wednesday night dinner table. I'm having sushi and salmon with it. Yeah. A fork. Perfect. That's fine. You could put like a fork. It could belong on the table, as long as it wasn't going to anyway be there during that meal. It doesn't have to be like something like you go to put a shoe from the floor on the table, like as a reminder. Like it doesn't have to be like out of this world. It has to be something that's discreet, but it's a reminder. Now, if you ate meat before and now you're parv, so you're fleishiks, but you're not eating fleishiks. You're eating parv, and the person next to you is eating dairy, and now they eat their dairy because you still have 3 more hours to go. That's okay. We don't make the restrictions so far that for 6 hours after you eat meat, you can't sit at the same table as someone eating dairy. Understand? So when you're eating meat and you're eating dairy, me and you can't sit at the same table, and But if I am fleishiks because I had shalom before, and now I'm coming to you're having your coffee here in the daily shul, okay? I want to still talk to you. Just because I had shalom in there doesn't mean I can't sit on the table with you over here. We don't go that far. Okay, we're going to have it on the same table. And otherwise, you could use the same kitchen table, for example, for meat and dairy, if it's clean, if there's nothing else on the table. But ideally, what you want to have is a tablecloth. So in my home, we have a meat tablecloth. So we never, ever eat meat on the kitchen table. Either it's a tablecloth, if one person's having a bowl of soup, put on a placemat or a towel. Or they're eating as a separation. So you should have different tablecloths for meat and for dairy. But if you have the same tablecloth and you washed it in the washing machine, that's totally fine. Totally fine.
My grandmother, we used on Shabbos, we have one for meat, and she washes it every day.
She washes it every day. Wow, it's a lot of washing for a tablecloth, but okay. But theoretically, that's fine. If you want to wash your tablecloth every single day, it might be cheaper to just buy another tablecloth than to go through a cycle of the washing machine every day. Okay. Anyway, one more thing is food that was served with the meat meal should not be served with the dairy meal unless it's perfectly clean. So, let's say, for example, you cut challah at the Shabbos meal. Sitting at the Shabbos table, you cut challah. You didn't finish the challah, so you put it in a Ziploc bag. And now, tonight, you want to have a cheese sandwich with the cut challah. Since the challah was cut by the fleshik meal, although the challah itself is not fleshik, right? Challah is parv,
Right.
but maybe got meat onto it, etc. You may have touched the meat, the bread with your fleshik's hands, etc. We don't eat that bread together with dairy. Can't make a cream cheese and lox sandwich with the challah that was sitting on the table while you had cholent earlier that day. Okay. However, that's only to bread cut during the meal to be eaten with the meat. If, let's say, you took the challah and you cut part of it and you put the rest away, didn't get touched. Let's say, for example, here we serve rolls, right? We serve challah rolls, but they're in a separate bowl. No one touched the challah and then touched the challah rolls. They weren't served on the same table per se. They were like same table, yes, but they were separate. They were in a separate container. So theoretically, if after Shabbos is leftover challah rolls, and now I want to take a challah roll and make a cream cheese sandwich with it, that'll be okay. Understand? Didn't sit on the table. It was separation. It was kept in a separate container. So if you cut the challah on the table and you have cholent on the table and meat on the table, then you can't eat it with dairy. But if it was kept separate, then it would be allowed. Okay. Now, the last thing we'll talk about today is baking bread with dairy or baking it with meat. So let me explain what this means over here. Shulchan Aruch, and I'm not going to bother reading the original source inside. It's on page 70, page 80, page 87. Whatever. We'll just read it. We'll read up here, page 93. Okay. Page 93. It is forbidden to knead dough with milk to make dairy bread. This is based on the Shulchan Aruch. So this is not a rabbinic enactment. The rabbis made a rule in Shulchan Aruch. You cannot put milk into dough. Can't put milk into dough. Why not? Even though you're going to eat dairy bread, theoretically, right? What's the problem? Since bread is a staple food consumed in most meals, there's a concern that some might accidentally eat this dairy bread with meat.
Yes.
They don't know that the bread has dairy in the batter, so they might eat it. This restriction extends to any baked goods that might be consumed with meat, such as croissants and knishes, but does not apply to sweet pastries that are only eaten as dessert. You would never eat cake with meat, right? You wouldn't put your pastrami on top of a piece of cake, right? You put it on top of bread, on top of a knish, on top of a bagel, but you wouldn't put it on top of a piece of honey cake or cheese. So pastries could have dairy mixed in, desserts, but bread you're not allowed to make it with dairy. However, there are certain conditions when it will be allowed. If you make a very, very small amount where it's only going to be eaten right away, okay, or if you make it in a way that it has a unique shape. So it's very obvious that this is not a regular loaf of bread.
Oh, you shouldn't make it look like a challah.
It shouldn't look like a challah, or any good, only challah. It shouldn't look like a regular loaf. But if there's a unique shape that it's clear this is not a regular piece of bread, you do something on it to make it very obvious that it's dairy, that will be okay. Which is why, let's say there's visible dairy on the bread. I'm going to give you a very good example. Pizza. Let's say pizza. What's pizza? It's bread cooked with milk, with cheese and tomato sauce. But when you look at pizza, you know that there's cheese on there. You can't by mistake, well, I didn't realize this was dairy. The cheese is right there on top. So then you're allowed to cook dough and cheese together because it's a very obviously visible dairy piece of bread. So you're not going to come to, and the same thing would be with a meat pizza. If you want to make a meat pizza, you're cooking meat with dough. You know what meat pizza is?
Yeah.
It's the same thing as a cheese pizza with meat on top instead of meat. Barecas, any of these things. So if it's very visible and clear what it is, that's okay. Now, the same way you can't cook dairy into bread, you can't cook bread with gravy or like fattening on the walls of the oven. To grease the, let me say, because you can't grease the pan with schmaltz. Okay, schmaltz is chicken fat. Today we don't really use it because we're much more healthy, and we like to use Pam or a very healthy margarine and whatever. But back in the good old days, they didn't have oil. How would they smear their pans? Chicken fat or grease. So you cannot grease the pan for the bread with grease, because then you may come to eat that bread with cheese. So that's the same ruling of the rabbis. Okay. And along those lines, we're going to, I don't know what they put over here, because we already talked about this last week, which was about the substitutes, where instead of using cheese. So before I go to this, so let's say, for example, cheese Danish. Is cheese Danish a problem to make? Why not? Because of pastry. Everyone is a pastry. But for example, also you can see, if someone wants to put a dairy batter, that will be forbidden. Because that of bread, because that will look like it's they don't eat it with meat, okay. Unless it's very visible things. Okay. There's some bakers that do like dairy and they have like sprinkles on top. There's like a whole rule how they do it. Anyway. Now the last thing, which is here in this chapter, which we already talked about last week because it came up, which is about the imitations. So almond milk, and we talked about this last week, but after the recording was over, we talked about it for a while afterwards, and that's in this week's chapter. Which is today, let's say you're cooking not with actual milk, but with almond milk. Yeah. Or with soy milk. Today, there's so many different kinds of non-dairy coconut milk. And yeah, there's really today, there's so many variations of milk, low creamers, high-fat creamers, all different kinds of non-dairy options. So, generally speaking, in Shulchan Aruch, the same way you're not allowed to cook the bread, the dough with milk, you're not even allowed to cook something with an imitation of milk because it might confuse people. Remember we looked about Marasayan? Unless what Shulchan Aruch says is you put almonds on top. So let's say you're cooking with almond milk, there has to be visible almonds. So someone will see the almonds and it was, this is almond milk. This is, okay. However, or today, let's say you're not putting almonds.
We're talking about bread now still.
No, there's any cooking now. Now going to any, this is really for any cooking. They're putting this together with the cooking of bread. Honestly, I was writing this. I would have put this next paragraph in the last week's chapter that we had, where it should have, where I think it should have gone. Personally, and that's actually what we talked about in the natural conversation. But since it's here, I just wanted to review it, and I didn't say it on camera. So for those that are watching online, some people are watching us, like Ravit, who wants to know if you can bake cheesecake in the oven where you make meat. Absolutely not, because there's cheese. We're talking about parv. This whole conversation, Ravit, was about cooking salmon and the fleishik, rice in a fleishik pot. You can't put cheese into a meat oven. Even though I take the
You can do the self-cleaning.
yeah, but that's not the question. Then you're kashering it.
Right.
It's not a regular.
But right after you can.
There are. The oven might be slightly different. There may be a room for Lisa, but let's not get into that. Okay. Okay. So regarding the almond milk, so the halacha says you have to put almonds on the almond milk, and then people can see. Or a modern day equivalent would be if you're serving creamer after your Shabbos meal, and you're serving at a fancy restaurant. If you're serving on your table, a bottle of almond milk is fine. But if you're like at a wedding and they're giving a little metal pitcher, of almond milk or soy milk, whatever it is, they would have to put the almond milk on the platter so you would know. However, today, many rabbis tell us that there's no reason why you can't. Today, it's so well known that there's equivalence. No one today thinks, oh, look at that person drinking milk with his, or eating dairy ice cream. And sometimes you get it. Someone says, dairy ice cream, but I didn't know anything about Yiddishkeit knows that it's not, it's parv. I'm saying it's non-dairy. The idea of a non-dairy ice cream is not like a chiddush. It's not a novelty. It's not like you have to convince them. We special for kosher. We made it special. Everyone knows that there's non-dairy options. It's not so you go to any store and you can buy it. It's not a novelty item. And therefore, many rabbis, and I would say the same way, say it's fine. What's interesting here, they bring in this cautious conversation, is that the Talmud, some people would say that maybe it's wrong. We talked about this last week, eating a cheeseburger, right? We had this conversation last week. We did. Yes, we did. But eating a cheeseburger. I didn't know this statement of the Talmud. So the Talmud says, so some people think that even though you go to Smashburger and you have this really nice juicy burger with this tofu, vegan, whatever cheese on top, delicious cheese. I've had it. It's very yummy. Even though it's very messy, but it's very yummy also. It gets all over your hands and all of your fingers, and you look like a total slob. You know what I'm saying? Don't wear white and don't eat like in front of someone you don't like. It's like you're getting meat everywhere. It's very messy. I can't compare, but I'm saying it's very yummy. I think it's very yummy too. But so the point is, so somebody says ethically it's wrong. Shouldn't eat even something that looks like meat and dairy. Shouldn't it taste like meat and dairy? But the Talmud actually says, this is very interesting. The Talmud actually says that all that Hashem has prohibited to us, He permitted to us something similar. Whatever God, and the Talmud gives several examples of things that are forbidden, but they have permissible equivalents. So, for example, you can't eat blood, but you can eat animal liver, which has blood, even though there's a way of kashering the blood. And you can't eat meat and milk together, but you can eat the cow udder, which is roasted with the milk inside the udder of the cow that wasn't taken out of the cow. If it never left the body of the cow, it's still like a natural liquid inside the cow. I mean, probably it's because I don't know people eat cow udder. I've never seen it on any menu I've ever seen. Cow udder. I don't know that it's like, yeah, Steve would have approved. Yeah. But the point is, that the Talmud is telling us that the fact that the Torah says prohibited, Torah also allows some way where it be permitted. Like sushi salad, whatever. Yeah, that's us doing it. So generally, it's not a concern to mix a vegan cheese with a meat burger, and you can enjoy it, and it's all beautiful. Anyway, my friends, this is about the separation of meat and milk, which I'll just end up with a beautiful thought that the Rebbe writes that if cooking, the prohibition of cooking milk and meat is because we should be so careful about animal cruelty. But from that, we go all these levels of extension to stay so far away from ever coming even close to possibly mixing meat and milk. How much more so, if that's how sensitive we need to be to the cruelty to the baby kid being cooked in his mother's milk, how much more so to a human being, how much more so to a Jew to have sensitivity to not hurt them, to avoid any cruelty to anyone anyway. Okay, my friends, Laila Tov. If you want to do the chapter 5 assessment, chapter 4, chapter 5, I'd love to see you, okay? And you did it. Good night, my friends. When did they invent almond milk?
He was like, yeah, man, let's not take it from cows.
No, actually.